You are seeing the birth of the last beast. The four kings have risen. What if I told you? You are watching the final prophecy unfold right now, not years from now, not someday, but this moment. And once it starts, there may be no way to stop it. You are seeing the birth of the last beast, and what comes next will change everything you think you know about global power. And the labor pains are shaking the whole world. What modern nation or alliance could be hiding behind its monstrous symbolism? Soon, we'll pull back the curtain on what those symbols may really represent. And according to the book of Daniel and the book of Revelation, when the beast rises, the world as we know it will never be the same. Have the four kings already risen? If they have, then time is shorter than anyone realizes. Next, you'll see how their shadow is stretching across continents. And if they have, what's their next move? Let's rewind to the Old Testament. The prophet Daniel had a dream. Not a normal dream. This one came straight from heaven, and it was terrifying. What Daniel saw wasn't just for his time, it was a warning for ours. And what Daniel saw could be the key to decoding what we're seeing today. Because some dreams aren't messages, they're warnings. And warnings mean something is dangerously close. In Daniel 7 verse 3, he says, "And four great beasts came up from the sea, diverse one from another. Each beast represented a kingdom." If these beasts are rising again, we're not looking at prophecy. We're watching history repeat itself. And you're about to find out how close we are to the final one rising. This final beast could already be awakening, and few are noticing. Have three of those kingdoms already risen quietly before our eyes? If you're not watching closely, you'll miss the signs and lose your chance to respond. But the last one, the fourth, it would be like nothing the world had ever seen. Because it doesn't conquer with war, it conquers with deception. Coming up, we'll reveal the hidden face of that deception. What separates this beast from all the others in history? Daniel 7 verse 7 says, "It was dreadful and terrible, and strong exceedingly, and it had 10 horns." That's not a future horror, that's a current warning. What's rising now may already match that description more than we realize. Could this be the foundation of a global empire forming right now? This beast is the one that leads to the Antichrist. And when the Antichrist rises, the countdown hits 0. What political system or global agenda is paving the way for his throne? What if this prophecy is unfolding live, and no one is connecting the dots? What you see next will make fiction look like a documentary. Let's look at what Daniel saw. The first beast was like a lion with eagle's wings. The second was like a bear. The third was a leopard with 4 wings. The fourth was too monstrous to describe. It had iron teeth, 10 horns, and crushed everything in its path. And whatever it doesn't crush, it will control. And what it controls, it never lets go. What modern powers reflect these beastly traits today? Daniel 7 verse 17 tells us plainly, "These great beasts are 4 kings, which shall arise out of the earth." 4 kings, 4 empires, and then the final beast. What comes after the 4th king will bring prophecy to its climax. And after that, only judgment. No more warnings, no more time. Could we be just one breath away from seeing the final king take control? And once he rises, the window for escape may slam shut. You'll want to hear what comes next, because after this, there's no turning back. This isn't entertainment. It's a lifeline. But here's where it gets intense. Some scholars believe these beasts aren't just ancient kingdoms. They're modern alliances, empires returning with new names, new borders, and new technology. Next, we'll expose who they may be and what they're planning behind the scenes. Already shaking hands, already signing deals, already laying traps. Are they speaking in front of the UN, shaking hands at summits, hiding in plain sight? They don't need to hide anymore. They know we're not looking. Let's break this down. Because if we don't, we might fall for the oldest trap in prophecy, thinking we still have time. But time doesn't pause for prophecy. It runs out. I want to be honest with you. There's a traditional way people have explained this, and it's been around for a long time. Most people think it's the right answer. But I don't think it is. I'll explain why. First, let me tell you about the traditional view, because you might have learned this explanation before. The traditional view says Chapter 2 and Chapter 7 are about the same empires. Remember that giant statue from Nebuchadnezzar's dream? The head and shoulders, chest and arms, belly and legs all stood for 4 empires: Babylon, Persia, Greece, and Rome. That's definitely true for Chapter 2. So, people ask, couldn't these 4 animals in Chapter 7 also stand for Babylon, since Babylon often used lions as a symbol? Persia, Greece, and Rome? It sounds possible, but I don't think it works. Let me give you 4 reasons why this doesn't fit, and then I'll share a better explanation. First reason, the empires don't match the beasts. The history of those 4 empires doesn't match the details of these animals. There are some big differences. For example, Rome never had 10 rulers at once. The Roman Empire never had 10 horns. This one detail alone could flip centuries of prophetic interpretation upside down. Greece didn't start with 4 leaders. It started with 1 leader, Alexander the Great. But this beast has 4 heads from the beginning. There are other big differences too. And each one of those differences pushes us closer to a modern-day fulfillment. These aren't just symbols. They're warnings, and the target is us. And each difference could point to a prophecy meant for today, not ancient history. The biggest one is that these empires didn't rise during a time of worldwide chaos. But chaos is exactly what we're seeing now. And that might not be a coincidence. So what empire is rising now, during a time of chaos that matches Daniel's vision? Could the final beast already be assembling while the world calls it progress? What we decode next could reveal how Satan is building his kingdom in plain sight. Second reason, Persia and Greece are already named elsewhere. The second big reason is this. Persia and Greece are named in Chapter 8. Persia is described like a ram, and Greece is described like a goat. Now, if God is calling them something else here, it would seem confusing. Unless this was never about history, it was about the end of history. This could be the moment the veil is lifted and the truth stands revealed. Third reason, the beasts are future, not past. The third reason is even stronger. Daniel is told in the dream that all 4 of these beasts will show up in the future. But when Daniel had this dream, Babylon was already on its way out. Could Daniel have seen a timeline meant only for the final generation, ours? And if that's true, we may be standing at the final hour of the final chapter. What happens next might prove we're living in the final phase. And what if that timeline is almost complete? The clock isn't just ticking. It might already be on its last seconds. Fourth reason, the first 3 beasts survive. The final argument for me is in verse 12. It says that the first 3 beasts, even though they lose their power to rule the world, will still exist after the fourth beast is completely wiped out. That is what the Bible clearly says. What kingdoms today match that strange prophetic pattern? Ruled, then preserved. We'll explore 3 world powers that already fit this profile perfectly. So, the lion, the bear, and the panther represent kingdoms that will still be around, even when the fourth kingdom is gone. Could they already be in place? Now, if that's true, you can't make Babylon, Persia, Greece, and Rome fit these 4 beasts. Because these beasts aren't relics of the past, they're blueprints for the future. This prophecy might not be about what already happened, but about what's next. And what happens next may be irreversible. Now, let's figure out who these beasts are. I'll start with the fourth beast because it's the easiest to identify. It's the clearest one, and it has the most clues. It's also the most important beast of the 4. And the most dangerous ones often appear last, when no one expects them. In fact, the Bible gives us 21 verses about this beast, but only 3 about the other 3. That imbalance might be God's final megaphone before the chaos breaks loose. This tells us that the main point of the whole dream is about this fourth beast. It's the biggest thing in the whole vision. Because once this beast rises, nothing will ever be the same again. Why does God give so much attention to one beast unless it's the most dangerous of all? Here's where the book of Revelation helps us. It talks about the last world kingdom in human history as a beast with 10 kings. And those kings may already be shaking hands behind closed doors. Are those 10 kings already seated, waiting to seize power in one prophetic moment? Up next, we'll trace modern coalitions that might be fulfilling this 10-king prophecy. The last kingdom ever to rule the world will have 10 kings, just like in Daniel's dream. Could those 10 kings already be aligning behind the scenes for global control? If this alliance forms, it could trigger the final countdown to global tyranny. Does that sound familiar? Revelation also says something surprising. This last beast will take parts of the first 3 beasts. It will have a lion's mouth, a leopard's body, and a bear's feet. A Frankenstein empire stitched together from the world's darkest regimes. This means the last kingdom will have some of the same traits as the first 3 beasts. Revelation also tells us that out of those 10 horns, one will become the strongest. The moment one rises above the others, history will be rewritten in real time, and he won't wait long to strike. This horn will grow into the last world dictator. You're about to see how one man could take the whole world captive. Is the Antichrist already rising through the ranks while the world watches distracted? Could his power come through peace, but lead to destruction? And if peace is the weapon, who will see the war coming? Revelation even gives this dictator a name: Antichrist. Now, the word anti doesn't just mean against, it also means instead of. So, the Antichrist is someone who sets himself up as instead of Christ, the last world leader. This is not just an enemy, it's a counterfeit savior. And the world may not resist him, they may welcome him. If the world applauds him, who will oppose him? Could the most dangerous figure in history arrive with the world's applause? Could millions be deceived by someone who claims to offer peace, justice, and salvation? Especially if he offers solutions that feel like miracles. Miracles can be signs, or they can be traps. And when the miracles begin, will you be able to tell what's real? The Bible tells us that one day there will be a dictator who controls the entire world. This is the final part of world history. We are closer to the last chapter than anyone dares to admit, and that history could be entering its last chapter now. Time is no longer on our side, and we may already be turning the final page. This leader will rise to power through cruel and violent methods, crushing anyone who stands in the way. Resistance will come at a terrible cost. The puzzle is almost complete, and the picture is terrifying. That's why the fourth beast has iron teeth and brass claws. It's ruthless and powerful. Mark my words, at the end of time, there will be a kingdom with 10 rulers. And in a moment, you'll see why the world is already being shaped to fulfill that prophecy. Daniel tells us that out of 10 leaders, 3 will lose their power and be removed from their countries or states within the world empire. 3 will fall. Their removal might not come by vote, but by force. Which 3 world leaders will be removed, and what will replace them? The replacement may be far worse than the ones removed. Watch closely, because what replaces them will set the world on fire. Then one small leader, called the Little Horn, will rise up. This next moment will show why this little figure is the biggest threat to humanity. And his rise will look harmless until it's too late. He will look like the answer until he becomes the end. What makes this little horn so powerful that he topples empires? This leader will take over those 3 leaders first, then control the other 7, becoming a world dictator. When all 10 fall under one, prophecy will be fulfilled. And when he takes control, freedom may vanish overnight. The world may not notice freedom is gone until it's too late. Could this shift already be forming behind the scenes of global politics? Every news cycle may be part of the final countdown. When this happens, you'll know we are in the final part of human history. Soon, we'll reveal what signs mark the point of no return. And by the time we recognize the moment, it may be irreversible. Revelation also tells us that people will need a special number on their foreheads to go into a store and buy food. And the lines between worship and survival will blur forever. You'll soon have to choose between what feeds your soul and what feeds your stomach. This is the final beast that Daniel spoke about, and its shadow is already darkening global events. Revelation gives even more details about what Daniel saw. Are we already watching the beast take shape in today's headlines? If so, then prophecy is not a forecast, it's a current event. You'll want to pay attention, because the headlines may be prophecy in disguise. Now, I think it's pretty clear we've found the strange creature I call the Griffin. This is the hybrid beast from Daniel's dream. A nightmare stitched from history and prophecy. What you're about to see is why this beast is more than a symbol. It's a system, and that system is already being built around us. But what hidden meaning is buried in this strange fusion of creatures? It's not the Roman Empire, because that's long gone. Instead, this is the final empire in world history, the peak of Satan's power. And this final empire will rise just before the return of Christ. If we're near its peak, we're also near the return. And the peak comes just before the fall. How close are we to seeing this empire rise in plain sight? What's next will help you recognize it when it finally appears. Satan will set up a human dictator to rule everything, and he may already be rehearsing behind the curtains of global power. Are we watching his final rehearsal and ignoring the warning? This next moment may reveal just how close we are to his first act. Will we recognize this dictator before it's too late? Honestly, I hope neither we nor our kids are alive when it happens. But what if we already are, and just don't see it yet? What if we're already standing in the shadow of the throne? You may not see the fire, but the smoke is everywhere. Sometimes prophecy doesn't knock, It slips in quietly. Now, I haven't pinpointed this exactly. I can't tell you which ruler or country this Antichrist will come from. He hasn't appeared yet. Or has he appeared quietly? And we just haven't noticed? Sometimes evil doesn't march. It whispers. We're about to see how silence can hide the most dangerous threat. The most dangerous leaders are the ones that charm before they crush. But people often like to guess, pointing to world leaders and saying, "This is him." The Apostle John even said, "There are many antichrists already in the world, but the big one hasn't come yet." So, what will make the final Antichrist different from all the rest? You'll know it's him, not because he's loud, but because the world obeys. Stay tuned, because this last piece completes the prophetic picture. There are plenty of people who want to act like Christ, who want to be saviors to their people. Now, what about the other three beasts? These are three world powers that will rise before the final empire. And one of them may already be growling behind the curtain of global politics. We are not waiting for the roar. The ground is already shaking. And their roar may already be echoing across nations. What nations are already shifting into position right now? Let's follow the movement of these modern beasts step by step. They'll lose their strength, but still exist as nations when the last one appears. And they'll survive even after it's gone. We may see their fall, but not understand its meaning until it's too late. You might witness it and not even know what you're seeing. Prophecy doesn't always shout. It often whispers through world events. Do we have any clues about who they are? There's one biblical principle to follow. The nations and empires mentioned in the Bible all had some connection to God's holy land. And this next clue may help unlock the most likely candidates. So which nations today have ties strong enough to fit biblical prophecy? That's why, for example, China isn't mentioned. It hasn't had any dealings with the Holy Land. That's also why America isn't directly mentioned. So, we have to focus on nations that have had direct involvement with Jerusalem, Israel, or the Holy Land. The next few lines may show why the map of prophecy centers on one city, Jerusalem. Because if prophecy is repeating, we might already be caught inside its next chapter. Could modern conflicts over Jerusalem be the key to unlocking these identities? And could that key already be turning? And what unfolds there may shake the whole world. Babylon, Persia, Greece, and Rome fit this pattern, which is why they're in Daniel chapter 2. But are there modern nations or empires that match these symbols? Let's trace the fingerprints of these ancient powers into the modern world. Because if the past is repeating itself, we may already be caught in the pattern. And if so, what happens when all four rise at once? Could the final collision be closer than anyone expects? What I'm going to share now is my personal opinion. You could call it speculation, but I feel it's worth saying, but it fits the pattern too well to ignore. And if the pattern holds, the time to prepare is running out. What empire could be symbolized by a lion that had dealings with Jerusalem? I think it's the British Empire. From 1917, when General Allenby walked into Jerusalem, to 1948, when Britain left, we were responsible for God's holy city. Could this era of British involvement have unlocked the next phase of prophecy? And what if that phase is almost complete? And that responsibility may have carried consequences we're only beginning to see. Was this a prophetic moment hidden in plain sight for over a century? Could we be living in the aftermath of a prophecy no one saw coming? Whether we wanted to or not, we got pulled into the Middle East, and that pull may have connected us to something much bigger than politics, something spiritual, something irreversible. Yes, we made conflicting promises to the Arabs and Jews, which is why neither group trusts us now. But still, we were involved, and I believe that made us part of God's plan in history. And now we ask, what was the cost of that involvement? Because that cost may be coming due.